What will the Atlanta Falcons look like in 2024? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Next Fan Up. And today we're going to get started breaking down all 32 NFL teams. We've decided to start with the Atlanta Falcons for no particular reason. As a Georgia native, I guess I can say I'm a little fond of Atlanta Falcons. I don't really have a favorite NFL team. I am a huge Georgia Bulldog fan, but I don't really have a favorite NFL team. So I don't know. I just decided to start with Atlanta, no particular reason. So let's get started talking about Atlanta. We're gonna end the video by breaking down, going through the schedule, seeing what we think what wins and losses are going to be had. But we'll get to that in a minute. We're gonna start the video by talking about some of the key offseason acquisitions, some of the departures, some of the free agency pickups, the draft. So let's get into that real quick. So let's start with some of the key pickups. Obviously, everyone is aware of the Kirk Cousins signing. He signed a 4-year, $180 million deal with $100 million guaranteed. We'll get into this a little bit more later. So obviously that was a big signing. Um, Big upgrade at the quarterback position over Desmond Ridder last year. This is an area of concern for the Falcons over the last couple of years. Quarterback play, I think, has really hurt them. Not having a top tier quarterback or even consistent quarterback play has really been detrimental to them over the last few years. I think they actually had a lot of good talent on the offensive side of the ball, and just have struggled at the quarterback position. So Kirk Cousins is definitely an upgrade. Now, obviously, there's a lot of question marks around Kirk Cousins. I believe he's 35, coming off an Achilles. He was having a great season before he got injured, but obviously, when you're in your mid 30s, coming off an Achilles tear, there's definitely going to be a lot of question marks around that. Can he come back and be the guy he was before? I think that remains to be seen. Another acquisition was Kevin King, a cornerback from the Green Bay Packers. King was actually a second round pick back in 2017 out of Washington. He's played 51 games over his career, 97 tackles, 7 picks, and 30 pass breakups, so not bad. However, there's a lot of questions around King as well. He actually chose to sit out the 22 season for personal reasons and then missed all of last season with a torn Achilles. So here's a guy that's 2 years removed from playing his last game. Don't know how much they'll get out of him. That might just be to shore up some of the depth in the secondary. I don't know that they'll get a whole lot out of him. I don't know what. We'll see how that plays out. Um, Another acquisition, Ray McLeod, wide receiver drafted in the 6th round by the Bills back in 2018. He's kind of bounced around a couple of teams, last couple with Pittsburgh. He's on a 1-year deal. I actually think he was bought in basically to return kicks, as the new kickoff rules should lead to more returns this year. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Darnell Mooney was another player brought in. Mooney's actually signed a 3-year, $39 million contract. So, they're offering him some decent money. Mooney does have a 1,000-yard receiving year under his belt. And I think he's going to be a really good number 2 to go alongside Drake London. I think a sneaky good pickup for Atlanta that I didn't really know until I started digging in, and maybe you guys already know, but they actually traded Desmond Ridder to the Cardinals in exchange for Rondale Moore. I think Moore, he's going to add some depth to that wide receiver room as well. But I also think he's a sneaky good pick because he can be a breakout player. I mean, I think you pair him with McLeod on that kickoff coverage with the new rules, and I think those two are speedsters. They have breakout playmaking ability. I think it's going to be really interesting. And to touch on the kickoff rules again, now that there's going to be it's more likely to see more kickoffs. I think you're going to see more teams pick up players like the McLeods, like the Cordell Pattersons of all, like Devin Hester's back in the day. And you're going to see some more, maybe some starters on the corners and stuff like that back in Dion days, back there returning kicks, just because I think there's going to be more opportunities for them to take them and have some big plays. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this year. I'm going to be interested to see how that is. Last addition I want to talk about, and there were some more, but these are the ones that stood out to me, was Charlie Warner. Warner's a tight end, played for his last 4 years with San Francisco. He's not known as a pass catcher, but he is a very skilled blocker. He actually had an 86.7 pass block win rate last year. and a 77.5 run block win rate. So I definitely think he's going to be a great addition to help shoring up the blocking for the quarterback, whether that's Kirk Cousins or another. I definitely think that he's going to be a big part of helping to shore up that line. One thing to note real quick, the team was recently docked a future fifth round pick. It's actually next year's fifth round pick, and fined $250,000 for supposedly improper contact with Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and Charlie Warner tampering. So fifth round pick is not really a whole lot. I don't know the message that sends to the rest of the league. I mean, I don't know how bad the tampering was, but obviously, they docked him up a pick. But let's cover real quick some of the losses. So, I'm going to start just running through some of these names, and you guys tell me if you kind of see a trend here. So, defensive end Calais Campbell, we know he's recently signed with Miami, so he's a departure. Cornerback Trey Flowers is now with the Jags. Outside linebacker Bud Dupree is signed with the Chargers. Cornerback Jeff Okudah has signed with the Texans. Tight end Jonnu Smith, he's also signed a deal with Miami. They actually cut bait with him when they brought Warner in. And then running back Cordell Patterson signed a 2-year deal with Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh may be picking him up, maybe for running back depth, but maybe also for the return game, because we all know Patterson was big time in the return game back in his days in New York. So, but what I noticed there were several names. There's 4 out of 6 names I just called were all on the defensive side of the ball. So their defense wasn't outstanding last year. It was kind of middle of the road, actually, if you want to be honest. But quite a bit of a lot of familiar names that went out of the building, seemingly a lot from that defensive side of the ball. And one thing we need to talk about too is the change at the top. So Raheem Morris was brought back in the offseason. He actually spent several years with the Falcons already in a previous stint. He was with the Falcons from 2015 to 2020, serving as a DC in that last year, and actually had the interim head coach for the last 11 games after firing Dan Quinn. He did have a 4-7 record, which is probably why he wasn't retained. But I do think with Morris being a defensive-minded head coach, maybe those departures won't be as felt as badly. I will say that anytime you have a defensive-minded coach, it's maybe natural that the offensive side might take a dip. So you really want to kind of pay attention to who they bring in as the offensive coordinator. And I actually think he made a pretty good hire here. If you don't know already, he brought in Zach Robinson. Robinson is the former wide receiver and passing game coordinator for the Rams this past year under Sean McVay. He helped guide the Rams to a top 8 offense last year. I think he will actually have a lot more to work with this year with the likes of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, along with some of those other additions that we've already talked about. So, going to be interesting. I mean, McVay has his tentacles spread throughout the league now. And I think there's a lot of coaches that have seen some success that have branched off from that tree. Obviously, the coach down in Miami is one of them. So we're going to see how Zach Robinson does as well. So let's real quick just go over some of their stats real quick before we get into the draft from last year. So just so you know where they finished last year. So let's start with the offensive side of the ball. So for total yards, they ranked 17th at about 334 yards per game. Passing yards was 22nd at 207. That's bottom third in the league. So obviously they're looking, by bringing Kirk Cousins in, they're looking to improve that dramatically. Rushing, they weren't too bad. 127 yards a game was good for 9th in the league. And points overall, they were 18.9, that's 26. That was 26 in the league last year. You can see they're bottom 7 in the league in points. So they definitely needed to make some changes on the offensive side. I think Robinson is going to bring some fresh blood in there. I think there's going to be a good turnaround on the offensive side. So let's check out the defense real quick. and they're really kind of medium of the road, but they weren't bad. I mean, some of these numbers I think could be skewed a little bit by just how bad the quarterback play was last year, and a lot of bad situations defense was put in. So in total yards, they were 321 a game, which is 11th, which is you know not terrible. Passing yards, they were actually eighth, at only giving up 202 yards a game on the pass. Rushing was a little bit worse, 118. That was 20th. So again, you're not great on the rushing side. And points per game, they were 18th. So just a little bit worse than mediocre there. But again, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like they had scraping the barrel trash can defense. So I think there's some room for improvement there. But again, their stats weren't horrible. So I think I think a lot of this is going to reside how well they do this year is going to reside around the quarterback play for sure. All right, so let's talk real quick about the draft, and let's skip. We know Michael Penix was their first round pick, number 8. Let's skip that for just a second. We'll come back to that. That with their second pick, they took Rook or and I probably butchered that name. I apologize, man. I mean, he's a defensive tackle out of Clemson. Some of the film I saw, I think he has potential to be pretty good. He's good with his hands. He gets off block. He sheds blocks quick, and he's got pretty quick feet for a defensive tackle. He ran a 4.72, so not too bad for a defensive tackle. Going to be interested to see. Obviously, I think he's going to be backing up Grady Jarrett. I think replacing Calais Campbell. So we'll see how he does. Then with the third pick, they went with Braylon Trice. He was an outside linebacker out of Washington. I think he's probably going to be a backup definitely this year. Most of these guys are probably going to be second, third stringers. Brandon Dorius, D-line out of Oregon. J.D. Bertrand is a linebacker at Notre Dame. And one thing if you notice is, so the first pick was Michael Penix at quarterback. And then you go D-tackle, outside linebacker, D-line, linebacker. So it looks like they're trying to get younger on the defensive side of the ball. So, because they spent 5 out of their first 6 picks on the defensive side of the ball. So some of those names that we saw depart on the defensive side, it does look like they're looking. Their attempt is to get younger on the defensive side. Similar to Kansas City, who's had a very young defense but very good defense. Took them to back-to-back Super Bowls. So I think they're trying to go kind of very similar here, get a lot younger on the defensive side of the ball. All right, so with their 6th pick, Jason McClellan, he was a running back out of Alabama. He was a fine running back. I think he had about 1,000 yards last year. He's pretty solid. I think he's definitely third string behind Bijan and Tyler Algier. But you always need depth at the running back position. Casey Washington, a wide receiver out of Illinois. It'd be interesting to know see if he makes the 53-man roster. I think he has good hands and good body control from the film that I saw, but he's a little slow out of his breaks. So separation may be a little hard for him to get. And then with their 8th pick, they took Zion Logue, D-line out of Georgia, so another D lineman. Zion Logue he's a solid player, but he's not a superstar by any stretch. So those were the acquisitions. Okay, so let's talk about the Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix deal. So Kirk Cousins was picked up by Atlanta. We already talked about it. 4-year deal, $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. And then they surprised everybody when they picked Michael Penix with the number 8 pick. Now, I'm not surprised they took him. I'm only surprised they took him after paying Kirk Cousins as much as they paid him for as long as they paid him. Penix is not a young quarterback coming out of college. I mean, he's one of the older ones. He's 24 years old. So if Kirk Cousins plays all 4 years, you're looking at Michael Penix now, 28 years old before he gets to start for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I tend not to believe that Kirk Cousins is going to play out all 4 years. So I actually think, after looking into this, I think it's actually a pretty good pickup for them, because I think you can let Penix sit behind Kirk Cousins for maybe 2 years and develop. And I think he was probably NFL ready as it was. If you saw him play this year, if you've watched some of those games, whether it was against Oregon, whether it was against Texas, this guy's got NFL arm talent, and he's very accurate with the ball. Some of the touch he was putting in, the place he was throwing his balls, the tight window throws, the touch passes. I mean, he was putting them on the money. Um, just look at his stats real quick for the last 2 years in Washington. I mean, in 22, he threw for 4,600 yards, 65% completions, 31 touchdowns to 8 picks for the QBR of 113. In this past year, took him to a national championship game, threw for 4,900 yards, again, 65% completion, 36 touchdowns, and 11 picks for the QBR of 116. So this guy, I think he's NFL ready now. But I actually think Atlanta is in a really good position if you think about it, because they've got a plethora of young talent on the offensive side that they don't have to pay right now. They actually don't have to pay them for a couple years, maybe another couple years. Drake London, I think he's going to his third season, so he was a first-round pick. So you probably got another 2 years before you have to pay him. Bijan's going into his second year. Pitts is going into his third or fourth year. So, I mean, you got a lot of young guys that you really don't have to pay yet. You could probably franchise one of them to get another year out of that. So these 2 years that you're going to be paying, or 3 years, or however long that you end up having to pay for Kirk Cousins, I really think they can afford it. So I think it's actually a good move that they brought him in and let Penix develop behind him, because, I mean, Love is showing right now, you don't have to be a starter day one and still be good. I think the old adage, I mean, this was how it was back in the day. I mean, I'm an old head. I still remember, Steve Young was playing behind Montana. Aaron Rodgers playing behind Favre. I mean, even Patrick Mahomes didn't start his first year. So, I mean, I think there is there's value there if you can sit a young quarterback, and let him learn the ins and outs of the NFL. Let him, give him some time to develop and get used to the speed of the NFL game. I think that's going to be invaluable to them, and I think they've really set themselves up well to have a nice run over the next 4 to 6 years. With once Penix comes in there, you still got a lot of these young guys that will be they'll be getting into their contract extensions. Meanwhile, because you drafted Penix in the first round, you won't have to extend him until year 5 if they wait that long. But I think cap wise, I think they actually made a good pick here. So what's your feelings on that? That's where I stand on that. I actually think they played that well. At first, I was really scratching my head, wondering what in the world were they thinking. Why would you pay this guy and then draft a quarterback in the first round? But after thinking about it and looking at it a little more, I actually think they've set themselves up cap-wise really nice over the next couple of years. Now, they will have to take a cap hit on Cousins if they try to dump him before the 4-year contract is up. But that's something they'll deal with at that time. Maybe he plays the whole 4 years. I don't see it. I mean, he'll be 36, I think, when he starts this year. I think he turns 36 in August. 36 coming off of ACL. Is he going to play to his 40? I kind of doubt it. I could see maybe 2 more years, and then Penix comes in. I think they're set up well. Tell me what you think in the comments. All right, so let's get into the Atlanta Falcons' schedule this year. So we can see the first game of the year, they are starting off at home versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, they actually played Pittsburgh last year. Pittsburgh beat them. So I do think Pittsburgh is going through some changes as well. You're bringing Wilson in at quarterback. Obviously, there's still supposedly a quarterback competition there between him and Fields. I definitely think Wilson's going to start in week 1. But I do feel that Atlanta is going to start off the season on a good note. I think they get the win at home to start off the year. So we're going to give them a win against Pittsburgh. Next week, they play the Monday night game next week. Everyone knows Kirk Cousins struggles on Monday night. This is at Philly. I think Philly's going to be a lot better this year on the defensive side of the ball as well as on the offensive side. They had their struggles going down the stretch last year. I think Brew likes to call it a supernatural funk, whatever you want to call it. I think they get a lot of those things corrected. I definitely think that The Philadelphia gets the win here, so Atlanta's going to take the loss here. And then Kansas City at home. We know Detroit upset Kansas City earlier last year, first game of the season. They had Chris Jones holding out. Travis Kelce wasn't in the game. I don't see any reason to think that Atlanta is ready to compete with the likes of a Kansas City yet. I think their defense is not going to be able to stop Patrick Mahomes in that offense. I don't know that I don't think they can score with the likes of Kansas City. So I definitely think they're going to take another L here. So follow that up with a home game against New Orleans. And the history between New Orleans and Atlanta has kind of been a home and home kind of deal. They win at home, then New Orleans wins at home. It's just kind of been the way it's been for a few years now. I definitely think New Orleans has taken a couple steps back. I don't think they've done anything in free agency, and we're going to break down their video coming up, but I don't think they've done anything spectacular to bolster that roster. I actually think this is going to be Allen's last year as a coach in New Orleans. I think he gets canned after this year, and I think Atlanta gets the win here. So you have another conference game the following week, another divisional game, excuse me. It's going to be on a short week, though, but it is at home. So they get Tampa Bay on a short week. I think Tampa is also going to take a step back. They lost some pieces on the defense. I think is their center or one of their guards or somebody retired. So they're going to be looking to replace some pieces on the offensive line. Mike Evans is still great, but he's another year older. Godwin's another year older. I think they're just going to take a step back as an organization. I think that, and what were they, 9-8, 10-7 last year. So they weren't world beaters last year anyways. So I think Atlanta gets the win at home against Tampa Bay here. And then we roll three division games in a row. Week 6, you go to Carolina. I think Carolina is going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. They're still rebuilding. I wasn't sold on the Bryce Young pick. I think it's going to be another bad year for Carolina. So we're going to give Atlanta a win here. So they've already got 3 division wins. A win against Pittsburgh. Out the gate, I think they start off pretty good, 4-2. And then they have Seattle that comes cross country. Seattle's replacing a coach. I don't know. Geno took a step back last year. I don't know that they added anything spectacular in Seattle. Again, this is the first breakdown video we're doing, so this is one that's more likely going to be more wrong than any other one, but we're gonna roll with it anyways. I think Seattle is in rebuild mode themselves. They come across country. I think they take the L, so I can give Atlanta another W here. Then we get back to Tampa Bay, and this time it's at Tampa Bay, and I do think that Baker and the rest of the Bucs there, I think they get it together for the home game. I think they're going to split the series this year and give Tampa Bay the win here, so it's going to be L for Atlanta. Following Sunday, it's a home game against Dallas. Now, I really do think they have enough talent to beat Dallas. I just don't know that they're going to get it done. I think the defense from Dallas is still going to be pretty good. There's still a lot of pieces there to work with. Zimmer's a pretty good coordinator. He was a pretty good defensive mind. We're going to see what he does with Michael Parsons and the like. I'm not huge on Dallas this year. I think Dak is on a prove-it year. I don't think Jerry's gonna extend him. I wouldn't extend him. I would make this be a prove-it year. Your two playoff wins, one playoff win after that big contract extension. But however, with all that being said, I still think that Dallas comes to Atlanta and gets the win. So another L for the Atlanta Falcons here. Then the next game is another divisional game against New Orleans. This one is at the Superdome. Again, just seems to be the norm that the home team wins these games. So I'm gonna go with that. I think this is another game that I think Atlanta should win. I think they'll be favored in this game, but I think they're going to take the L on the road. So after starting 5-2, I have them getting 3 L's in a row. And what better to have the Denver team that's a total clown show right now. Uh, well, we actually go you actually go to Denver, but I think that's going to be I think Denver's going to be the worst team in the AFC West this year. I don't think they know what they're going to do with the quarterback position. Um, and I think Atlanta goes on the road after taking that L in New Orleans. I think they come back and I think they get that win in Denver. Then they get to their bye week. So I've got them at 6-5 at the bye, and I think at 6-5 at the bye, they're gonna have. I think I got them 3-2 in the division at this point, and I think they'll be either atop the division or right there, vying for the division going down the home stretch. And as we get into these last games in the home stretch, I think that the people that set the schedule up for them really did them a favor, um, because their last three games I think are all winnable. So we'll get into that though. So let's start with after the bye. They've got Los Angeles, and this is actually a noon kickoff. Um, I think Los Angeles having to fly all the way across country for an early kickoff. I think this bodes well for Atlanta. I think they get the win here. All right, following that up, they go to Minnesota, and obviously there's going to be a lot of excitement around this game as this will be Kirk Cousins' return to Minnesota. I don't think he's a vengeful guy. I mean, I think they left on pretty good terms. Kirk Cousins seems to be a pretty nice guy. I don't think he would hold a grudge anyways, but I do think the team is going to be very much up for this game as they played Minnesota the previous year and lost to them as well. So I think all the team wants to get this win, whether it's for Kirk or whether it's Kirk Cousins or whether it's just for revenge for last year's loss. I do think they go on the road, and I think they get the win in Minnesota. All right, they follow it up with another road. They got to go back on the road the following week to Vegas, and I think Vegas is going to be a surprise team this year. I think they're going to be a physical team. I think that Witherspoon coming to join Crosby on the defensive line. I think they're going to be a top 10ish defense. I think they're going to get after the quarterback, and Kirk Cousins is not fleet of foot, so I think he could be in for a bad day this day. And I've got Las Vegas getting the win here in the L for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's take a look at the last couple of games here. So if you see the last couple of games really are set up nicely for Atlanta. You've got the two bottom feeders of the NFC East, and then probably the worst team in football to finish the season with. So they've got the New York Giants at home, and New York they've just kind of been spiraling down since the year before last when they went to the playoffs. I like Brian Dable as a coach, but I just don't think that roster is built for contention. Daniel Jones, even if he's playing, he's not very good. I mean, they lost their best weapon in Saquon Barkley. Just recently, the news came out that Darren Waller is retired. So they've lost some key pieces off that, and I just don't think they've got the horses to do it. So I'm gonna give this one to Atlanta. And then you've got Washington. They're at Washington, and we're 17 weeks into the season now, but I just don't have any confidence in the Washington organization. I know Snyder's out now, but they're gonna have to prove, show me something before I think that they're actually gonna be any good. I like Dan Quinn. I think he's a pretty good coach. He almost got Atlanta to a Super Bowl. We all know what happened in that game. But I just don't think I don't think he's going to have it done in 1 year. So I think Atlanta's are still ahead of them at this point. I'm going to give Atlanta the win here. And Carolina. Carolina actually snuck a win out last year against Atlanta, and I think that left a bad taste in Atlanta's mouth. I actually think that was one of the games that got Arthur Smith fired, was losing to Carolina. That plus losing the last two games by a combined 50 points. I definitely think that was some of what got rid of Arthur Smith last year. So I think they're going to be very motivated. I think going to week 18, I think they're either going to be vying for the division, or if they haven't already clinched the division, I think they're going to be vying for a playoff spot. So I think Atlanta's going to be very motivated. And I think Carolina's going to be ready to pack it in, 1, 2, 3 Cancun. So I'm going to give the last week to Atlanta as well. And I think they're going to have a lot better season. I think, last year they were 7-10. This year, I think they're going to get 4 games more than what they were at last year. So I'm going to give them 11-6. A lot of times the coaches, change of a coach, you kind of can see a 3 to 4 game bump. I think they get that this year. I think their schedule sets up nicely for them this year. I think they can sneak one out maybe where they shouldn't. Um, I still think that Dallas game is a toss up. I'm currently giving it to Dallas, but I think Atlanta does have a lot of pieces on the offense they could flip that. So what do you think? You tell me. Do you see? Is this possible? Do you think Atlanta Falcons can turn it around and get to 11-6? Y'all tell me in the comments. All right, so that's our breakdown of the Atlanta Falcons this year. I've got them going 11-6 into the playoffs. I think they are going to win the division. I think they're going to secure the probably the 4 seed. I still think that the other divisions will be better than them, but I think they get the 4 seed overall. Um, so, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm dead wrong? You think I'm, on cloud nine here? You guys tell me in the comment section where you think I'm right, where you think I'm wrong, and we'll be looking forward to the next video. I'm going to be doing a breakdown video throughout the summer. We've got a couple months till football season gets started. We're going to try to get through all 32 teams. So look for the next one when it drops. Until then, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.